quality, it felt like. But the young players that came in to the side changed that attitude, I feel. Ultimately, the brilliant Sam Powell drop goal away at Hull KR led to the resurgence. Wins then on our away spell in the middle of the season at Leeds, and a really good win away at Huddersfield. I think had us fans of Wigan feeling better about things, and we weren't then looking back at those really dark days of an away loss at London and a home loss to Huddersfield, fucking hell, back in early March. The high points mostly came late in the year, obviously, clearly. Great home wins against Warrington and Castleford let me as a Wigan fan know that we had a team with playoff potential. Ultimately, the playoff games were a step too far for this side, leaning too much on the young forwards by that side. But in that back end of the season, Bevan French came in, showed some thrilling glimpses of what is potentially to come next year from him. And already, Wigan, we used 33 players, although probably the best two of our players played all of the games this year. George Williams has been replaced well, but will still be missed. Oliver Gildart has arguably been the most consistent strike centre in Super League in 2019, certainly in my opinion. And Morgan Smith, as we talked about him earlier, he showed all that he can be too in his 24 games, not least how he won't stand down to anyone. Alan doesn't like it, I do. His first game was Catalan at home, right? And in that game, the main two things he did was stand up to Greg Bird and stand up to Sam Cassiano, and it was fantastic. It was a sign of things to come. He consistently got in the face of the oldest and the biggest / dirtiest players that the other team could put up against him. I can't hide how awful the start of the year it was, leaving me at times feeling embarrassed to follow my club, all that shit that went on off the season. Although it was a year that gave me some great feelings too in the end. The Camp Nou experience, outside of the on-field action, was absolutely fantastic. The last gasp away win at Salford early in the year, that was one of the most enjoyable games being a Wigan fan over my time, because we were so low at that point. I think that's really it. Those young forwards, they're giving it week in, week out, plus the signings for 2020 and the off-field development at Robin Park. I mean, they do add some excitement for 2020, but it was not the best all round this year. I've talked enough there about Wigan, so do you guys want to help me out with these fan views?
Yeah. Anna Coates says, at the start of the season, I really thought we'd struggle to reach the top four, and for a while they were proving me right. It was painful to watch at times, but after a few dire weeks, we finally started to click and get a few wins under our belt. It still wasn't pretty, but my faith was restored in Lamb. We dug deep and clawed our way back. To finish second was an outstanding achievement for a new coach, in my opinion.
David Lawrenson says, Wigan flattered to deceive. Wigan finishing second reflects how poor the overall Super League standard is. So much needs fixing at Wigan on and off the field. Playing quality needs improving. Coaching needs improving. Fan relations need improving. Losing circa $1.5 million in a year can't happen again. Well, you're not the only team who does that. Attendances need improving. Bring on next year with new players and Robin Park, albeit without a season ticket for the first time in 25 years.
That's
Blimey.
Andy Curry said, disappointing last few weeks, but generally happy, as I thought this season would be a transitional season. But the players adapted to the new coach much quicker than I expected and had a good run at it in the end. Fantastic to see even more class youngsters coming through again too. Optimistic for next year.
Phil White said, after the shit start, we had a bit pissed off. We never made the grand final, but hey ho, looking forward to next season.
Go on, Tim.
Oh, Stuart Minnis says, start slow, end good in top 5, roll on 2020, hopefully trip to Wembley Stadium.
Lee White Pie says, meh.
Tom said, decent finish considering all the disruption early on, disappointed by playoff performances, but they show where we are at the moment more than the second place finish does. Excited to see more of the young forwards and the new signings next season.
My friend Cass, who filled in the form with the moniker Your Mum, because he's that mature, said, absolutely...
I endorse this.
Absolutely woeful to brilliant and back again. There you go. Sarah, you wanted to talk us through Salford's third place finish.
Well, it's nice to be able to talk about something positive,
yeah.
isn't it? It was unanimous the fans, Alan, Mark, Tim, and I all thought Salford would finish.
Oh no, Tim
11th.
thought 12.
I'll hold my hand up on this one.
My bad.
Yeah, it's been a typo.
Okay, Tim shockingly thought that Salford would finish 12th, whereas the rest of us were more optimistic and thought that they'd finish 11th.
I know, we were brimming with optimism.
This is it, yeah. We were so close to where they actually finished, unlike Tim, who so far off the pace, Tim. Mind you, you can get your own back on me in a minute. Anyway, yeah, like, it's just such a story of the whole being so much greater than the individual parts, I think, isn't it? It's, you know, they're not a team of stars. I think Jackson Hastings and Ian Watson have done a great job. You know, there's so much team unity that I say there was, because clearly there's not much of the team left, but there was a lot of team unity there. They played for one another. They had heart for one another. Hastings obviously was instrumental. Lola here, when he came in, he brought something new to the team. Evels played very well. I was a little bit confused by the learn swap of Junior Sow and Paulie, but actually it worked really well for Salford, and clearly so well that he's signed for them, hasn't he, Paulie? Josh Jones, another player who had a great season. You know, they just went on that long streak of just winning matches, and I think people they just flew under the radar for a long time. People didn't pick it up, and then suddenly it's like, oh, they've won 6 on the bounce, and you think, yeah, and that's why they're so far up the table.
Yeah, we didn't see them enough on television, did we? And that's sort of a little bit why the performances crept up on some people. Obviously, we pay close attention throughout the year because we do this show, and Sarah, your brother-in-law, is a Salford fan, so obviously attention there as well and stuff. So many Salford players had their best ever seasons, I think. Josh Jones had probably his best ever season. Bibby had definitely his best ever season. Inu came in and was fantastic for them and had his best season since he's been over here.
Well, yeah, Joshua was raving over his kicking, you know. You wouldn't have said he was an amazing kicker, but actually converted quite a lot from the touchline, didn't he?
And Joey Lussick's the other player that, I mean, we keep talking about their players, and he will still be there next year, which is a big boost, but Logan Tompkins, I can't believe he's going to be in the Championship next year after the second half of the season he had for Salford. He wasn't even that key to them, it felt like, at the start of the season, but then when they realised Lussick couldn't do 80 minutes because he was putting his body in front of too many tackles and he needed to tell him to calm down a bit to get the best out of him, Logan came in and was fantastic as well. They were very good. They were very, very positive, like you say. It was a positive story. Yeah,
you know, and I'm really pleased for them. You know, those fans that are there every week, you know, good on them, and I'm pleased that they've got something really positive, and I hope that they can build on that for next year.
Well, we had a couple of views in from Salford fans. What did they say?
Who wants to go for that?
I'll do Chloe Webb for you because I think I can translate it. Chloe said, Salford, up the fucking Reds, we go again.
Andy Steele
dreams
says,
are made of a season like this.
Andy Steele says, dreams are made of a season like this.
Yeah, Andy Steele says.
Did Andy Steele say anything?
Yeah, he did. He said dreams are made of a season like this. Yeah, he did.
Good old Andy Steele, thank you.
Thanks, Andy Steele.
Thanks, Andy Steele.
Does anyone else have anything on Salford? Tim, Alan, you must have a comment for Salford because, you know, Tim, you said London everyone's second favourite team. I think they were for parts of the season, but certainly in the last month of the season, Salford were everyone's second favourite team.
Yeah, I think, you know, showing the story again. I mean, it's who I wanted to win in the grand final just for entertainment factor and having that fairy tale, and it was a bit of fun, wasn't it? I'm slightly worried that now that, you know, they're sort of breaking the band up a bit, that it's going to be difficult for them next year. But then, quite frankly, what do I know about Salford?
Yeah, fair point.
As we've proved this year.
Well, you knew better about St Helens, so shall we move on to the champions?
See, the thing is, you didn't even have to say that, because I could have taken this one, but somehow something in you wanted to say that. Yes, moving on to the last team and the champions.
I genuinely feel sick.
Top of the league. It's legit, genuine champions. In both senses of the word. I think almost everybody agreed. Only Sarah was a slight dissenting voice, but even she only had them second. So I think everyone was very positive about them. What can you say about them this year? 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Utterly dominant season. 4 games lost all year, which when you think about it is right up there with possibly some of the best records ever.
They didn't lose any single game south of, outside of the north. They lost 4 games. 3 of them were in London and 1 of them was in France. That's just so dominant.
They must have something about the Watford gap, but anyway.
I thought it was a Thelwall viaduct, but then I realised they wouldn't have driven over that to get to Perpignan. But they might have. Anyway.
You never know. Anyway, moving on. The one thing I want to say is that actually it's interesting how the narrative of the season has changed after how it was probably at the end of August, after a scraped win against Halifax in the semi-final and then losing at Wembley. How actually their 2 kind of performances in the playoffs actually has really changed the narrative about St Helens' year, because before that it would have been, yes, they won the league leader shield, blah blah blah, but they choked again. But you've got to say, particularly the first game in the playoffs against Wigan, I feel that, because if a team had played like that against my team, in many ways I don't know what Wigan could have ever done about that, to be brutally honest. It's probably the best it's definitely the best half of rugby league I saw all year, possibly the best for years actually.
I'm trying to think of a game that I've seen in person where one side was just so thoroughly impressive over the other, and maybe I go back to when South Sydney dicked St Helens in the World Club Challenge. It's on the same pitch, same sort of game. But yeah, you're right. It was the best performance I've witnessed in many a time.
We've already talked about Lachlan Coote. One player that constantly gets overlooked is Nguama. We've talked about him a little bit. Another kind of big name that came in and actually, they both blended into the team. But you'd say that Coote had probably greater highs, but actually Nguama was more consistent.
If I remember,
he was a constant
right,
8 out of 10.
He scored the first try of the Super League season, and I'm not sure if it might have been Coote who gave them.
Yes, he did.
The pass.
I'd like to also say that in the preview show, I tipped him as the player to watch.
Which one?
Nguama.
Well, he didn't let anybody down, did he? And at the end of we don't need to mention that player who departed, but they hardly missed him, did they? And actually he had a good year in Toronto, some would say.
That one.
That one.
Very nicely worked.
Thanks. That's just for Tim. It felt actually like Holbrook managed their resources better this year. Roby kind of energy levels being managed. He managed some of the older players better. And the final thing I have to say, and obviously he's had a very good year, but I just want to say to St David, I looked at his pre-season prediction, and he did pick that they'd get to 2 finals and they'd win one of them. So I just wanted to say that. So he got that right.
Well, I think
well done.
He's given us the longest of the fan reviews. So
he's got a lot to talk about.
Well, he has. There's so many great performances. Shall we just quickly run through the other 2 that we got in first?
Yeah.
So Frogmore said, just getting a hubcap and that cup-looking thingy, then some emoticons that